welcome to our webinar today, Sharing Your Heritage, a workshop in constructing the design practice. This third webinar of CCD-NL is a continuation of the previous webinar series, as well as a continuation of the collaboration with the Wasserij in Rotterdam through an online platform in preserving Ikat heritage. This webinar is very special because the presenter Nikki Wester, a future heritage designer, and Gianni Antonia, a practice-based researcher and communication designer from the Wasserij, will interact directly with the Indonesian Ikat artisans in NTT in a live workshop format that you will watch now. And this workshop is supported by the municipality of Rotterdam. The artisans in NTT who participate are Selviana Boi Dao from Belu, Marsa Fattu and Asmawet Fattu from Rotterdam, and Syariat Tole from Alor. Through this workshop, CCD-NL aims to create an experience for the artisans and gain fresh new ideas. It will open their horizon to international collaboration and can empower them. This workshop shows the sharing knowledge and learning process between the Dutch designers, Dutch organization, the Wasserij, and Indonesian artisans in preserving Ikat traditional heritage through design practice. This workshop will be divided into two parts, hosted by Nikki and Gianni, and it will show the real interactions in learning and sharing knowledge between Indonesian artisans and Dutch designers. On behalf of CCD-NL, thank you very much for your participation and enjoy the workshop.
Good morning from CCD-NL. We all here today. We begin with our third session on binding the Dutch and Indonesia through Ikat. So first, I would like to give the opportunity for Ibu Nikki to have a brief introduction about herself, and later on, Pak Gianni. Thank you.
Thank you, Yeti, for the introduction already and for welcoming us to this workshop of today. Well, as said, my name is Nikki Wester. I'm a textile designer and future heritage specialist, and I'm working as a freelance designer since 2012. In general, I'm fascinated by cultural heritage, and I convert myself to help organizations and companies to keep their legacies alive. And in 2019, I started collaborating with CCD-NL after a very interesting discussion with Yeti about cultural heritage and Ikat. And there I became involved in the Ikat program. I provided already several lectures on heritage, and currently we are together working on this series of workshops together with artisans involved in the project. This workshop is the first in the series, and I do this all from a designer and a design professional perspective. I'm involved in this project. I think that's interesting to emphasize. I'm involved in this project because I feel the urgency to help to keep this beautiful craft of Ikat alive. I'm a weaving expert and I'm a weaving enthusiast, so no surprises there. And I see opportunities to make the communities outside of Indonesia and outside of NTT aware of the Ikat's value, and I want to enthuse the younger generation to contribute to the current history of Ikat, because together we can keep legacies alive. That's my vision.
Thank you very much, Yeti. I'm very honored to be here. My name is Gianni Antonia, and I'm a branding designer or graphic designer, working in branding and in both fashion and textiles. The last 10 years, I've been working with artists, with fashion designers, with beauty designers, to help them communicate who they are through visuals, through graphic design. So this last year I also started a project called Cypherloom, which looks into how textiles could further communicate people's identities through fashion, as textiles is a kind of key element of fashion and its communication. So looking in how future technologies such as algorithms, designing with algorithms and data could help benefit the ancient practice of using symbolism within textiles. And that's why I'm very interested in working with you all, as I think we can both learn from each other. And yeah, I'm very excited to start this workshop. Thank you for welcoming me.
So the meeting today will be led directly with Julita Otuyu. Julita is our advisor at CCD-NL. I will give the floor to Julita to start with the meeting today. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone, and I hope all of you, we all enjoy the meeting and the workshop and an interaction today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone. So I give now time to Nikki to start with our first workshop, analyzing object. Yes, you can start now, Nikki, please.
Thank you, Julita. Today's workshop will all be about your personal heritage. And in preparation to this workshop, I asked the artisans participating to bring an object that speaks for them or feels like their personal heritage. And we're going to do an exercise in analyzing this object to break it down into some principal elements to play around with later on in this workshop. So the first thing to do is I'm going to ask the artisans to show you the objects that they brought that sparks their personal heritage. And I would like to ask them to tell us in 2 minutes, maybe, or maybe less, to explain why they chose this object. I'd like to give the opportunity to them. For the people at home watching this video, they can also search for an object in their surroundings that sparks their personal heritage and do the same exercise, of course. This is not only for the artisans, but for everybody watching.
Baik, terima kasih. Hari ini saya memperkenalkan ini benda sisir, jalan leluhur berupa sisir, Ibu. Sisir ini menceritakan garis keturunan atau warisan yang diturun-temurunkan dari generasi ke generasi, khususnya dalam keluarga kami atau suku kami. Nah, sisir ini digunakan untuk perminangan, di mana sisir ini dibawa pada saat meminang mempelai wanita. Sisir ini dapat dikenakan pada kepala mempelai wanita atau wanita tersebut. Nah, itu melambangkan mempelai wanita ini, wanita tersebut tadi sudah termasuk sah atau otomatis belis atau maharnya sudah diselesaikan. Sekian Ibu, cerita saya.
Oke, so now sekarang Ibu Marsa.
Ini Alkitab tua, peninggalan dari Mama. Sejarahnya saya kurang tahu karena sudah baru lihat. Tapi dari ceritanya ini dibawa dari Mama, dari rumah orang tua waktu menikah.
Oke, ya terima kasih.
Ini gambus ini dari Bapak. Bapak itu dulu tukang main gambus. Dulu tukang main gambus, terus ini di saat kalau gambus itu kalau ada bunyi, berarti di situ ada Bapak. Tapi ada acara buat rumah, acara sunat. Berarti di situ ada acara dana. Berarti Bapak mulai main gambus, isi pantun berbalas, dana. Buat seperti joget.
Oke. Ya, terima kasih.
Tarian adat begitu. Tarian adat.
Oke, iya.
Terima kasih Ibu Syariat. I know that Ibu Syariat also can play. Did she learn that from her father? And does she play at these festivities?
Maka saya cerita sedikit dulu karena waktu peninggalan Bapak ini ada gambus di rumah. Terus di rumah kan saya ada mama sendiri. Maka saya coba main ini musik gambus ini saya coba main-main di situ saya sudah biasa. Jadi lagu itu saya main lagu itu mulai lagu Lego-Lego, terus ini lagu kasida. Jadi sekarang saya sudah bisa main ke panggung-panggung itu membawa gambus.
Okay, thank you all for showing the objects. I think it's time to start breaking down these objects into basic elements so we can design later on in this workshop. And I'm using the technique called color, pattern, surface structure, and texture. to break this down. And first, I'm going to ask you all to analyze the color of your object. And therefore, you're not only going to say, oh, hey, this guitar is green, or oh, this comp is metal colored. Try to look at all the different shades of color and write down what kind of color it is. This can be done by writing down the name of the color, or if you have access to maybe paint or something to mixture colors, you can try to copy the color in a color swatch. That's totally up to you, what kind of materials you have in front of you. So please start analyzing the color of your object. I'd like to add something onto that. You can look at objects inside of the house, but as soon as you move it outside of the house, you get the lighting that can play a role in the different shades that you see. You can compare it to looking at the sea. Most of the people, if they describe the sea, they say the sea is blue. But if you take a good look at what kind of colors you find in the sea, you see many shades of gray, many shades of blue, many shades of green and turquoise, even whites are there, and maybe browns. So there's more to it if you take really the time to analyze what you really see.
Kalau yang sisir di dalam maupun di luar warnanya tetap hitam, Ibu. Kalau yang bulat, yang logam bulat-bulat ini, yang kalau di dalam di luar dia warna putih perak, Ibu. Kalau kena cahaya dia kuning-kuning emas gitu.
That's a gorgeous combination. Thank you, Ibu Selviana, for analyzing.
Biru sama putih kecoklatan dengan hitam.
Putih kecoklatan dan hitam.
Ini di dalam. Tunggu dicoba dulu. Buat keluar.
So she will try it outside first. Yeah.
Di luar sama dengan di dalam. Lagi mendung.
Di sini lagi gelap.
Oh, okay.
Mendung terus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she also has an object that does not have reflective material. So probably the shades will not change that much. But if she looks at the corners of the pages, maybe she can analyze later on all the different shades of brown and cream that she can find. But that's for later on.
Oh yeah, if I can add to that.
Yes, please.
Obviously, it's very interesting how much detail you see when different lighting is in practice. But you could also try how much more you know about the object when there's little lighting. So let's say when you close your eyes and analyze your object, you'll notice that there's different kinds of textures. For instance, I've got a teapot here with me, and when I close my eyes and feel the teapot, there's like this kind of really organic, stonish feel to it that you won't notice from just looking at it. So yeah, you could try that as well in your analyzation.
I will continue with the surface exercise.
Yes, perfect.
Because it's perfect with your tip. But for the women who just analyze the colors of their object, maybe it's not only nice to write down the color, but also write down the meaning that the color has for you. Maybe it tells you something about love, or maybe a color represents hate or sadness, or it can give you a feeling you had in your youth. So you can connect the colors to a certain feeling or a certain meaning. Try that out. And I do have another question outside of the workshop. And when they are making ikat and when they are creating symbols and ikat patterns, do they make use of certain colors because maybe when they weave a fish, that a fish is always connected to the color blue, or if they do something with royals, that it's always combined with something yellow or red? Is there a certain connection that needs to be made?
Kalau ikat rote biasanya pakai warna hitam sama putih dan merah. Kuat atau mandiri gitu. Putih suci, merah berani. Boleh.
Boleh aja ya, boleh.
Ya.
Tapi ini merupakan yang utama harus mengikuti ini
Yang
dulu.
pertama ya, hitam merah putih.
Hitam merah putih.
Oke.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a meaning behind the color itself, and it's funny that the colors they analyzed in the Bible are these red, white, and black colors. So it's there's an overlap there. It's interesting.
Merah artinya berani, biru cahaya, putih kecoklatan lembut,
Hitam,
kuat,
strong.
putih suci.
Terima kasih Ibu Marsa.
Ya.
Sama-sama.
Sekarang Ibu Selviana.
Dari bendanya tadi Ibu melambangkan putih
Warnanya
kuning.
Putih,
Kuning hitam.
putih, kuning, hitam.
Putih artinya bersih, Bu. Bersih bisa membuat desain motif. Kuning melambangkan kesetiaan. Hitam ikhlas. Logam Ibu.
Logam melambangkan apa, Ibu? Kira-kira apa?
Senang, Bu. Happy.
Bentar ya.
Ya.
Maaf, senang.
Bulat.
Terima kasih Ibu Selviana. It's funny to see that both the Ibu Marsa and Ibu Selviana both have similar colors in their object, but the meaning they connect the colors to are completely different because the backstory is different. So that's a nice change to see and to notice. Can we go to the second part? Analyzing the structure, because Gianni already made a very good remark. I think it's a good idea to, we switch them around, pattern and surface structure and texture. The object, of course, also has a structure and a certain texture. Some of the objects are smooth, other objects have a structure in it. And what I'd like you to do is, first of all, analyze this object structure and texture with your eyes open by feeling it. And then secondly, with your eyes closed, maybe indeed, like Gianni said, you suddenly notice different structures or different textures. Then you try to make a drawing of this structure onto your piece of paper. And this drawing can be done in any way you like. It can be abstract, it can be just a line. Try to translate it in the way that you like to translate it. If you need help there, Gianni and I are there to help you.
Ini sisir. Kalau ketika menutup mata dan lalu meraba pada logam tadi, pinggirnya agak kasar-kasar, Ibu. Bagian logam pinggir agak kasar sedikit. Kemudian meraba ke sisir. Ujung bagian bawah agak tajam. Dia tajam, Ibu. Halus. Yang bagian atas, yang ini Ibu dekat yang hitam.
Oke, tekstur atas, yang bagian
halus.
atas.
Betul, yang lengkungannya itu halus.
Top is soft.
Yang di bawah ini tajam. Ini lengkungannya, ini lengkungannya dari sisir. Kekuatan logam dari sisir. Dan ini garis-garis sisirnya yang tajam tadi, Ibu. Ada bedanya ketika membuka mata, kayaknya seperti putih polos, Ibu. Ketika menutup mata yang saya meraba, yang bagian logam ini pinggirnya agak kasar-kasar. Ada beda, Ibu. Kalau dibuka matanya dilihat licin. Mulus.
Thank you.
Terima kasih, Bu Selvi.
Sama-sama, Ibu.
She partly did already the pattern. We come to that later. Gianni, later the floor is yours to give some remarks on the analyzations of Selviana. First, I'd like to add that the thing she found out, that the object is actually more rough than she thought initially. She can maybe translate that later on in the use of material for her weaving. Instead of using a very smooth silk, she can maybe use a more combination with a more rough material. So that when you use an ikat or you use a fabric, when you see it, it looks smooth, but if you close your eyes, it has the same roughness that she experiences when using the comb. So I will emphasize that later on, but first the floor to Gianni. Maybe you have some remarks or something to add on the analyzations of Selviana.
Yes, thank you, Nikki. First of all, Ibu Selviana, wonderful analyzation. The roughness, the smooth edges, the hairs of the combs. I would give the tip to maybe visualize those key elements that you analyzed from the texture. So, for example, I've been doing the same exercise, and so like at first I like scratching the surface of the teapot. So I draw this kind of scratching illustration to kind of reflect on how it felt like. And then the teapot also has like these kinds of illustrations on it that have depth. So when I would like use my finger on the surface, I would feel this kind of pattern. So like kind of illustrating these key elements, these words of like roughness and smoothness into a visual pattern could help you perhaps get inspiration for reconstructing these elements into a new weaving pattern, for example.
Yeah, okay. Now we move to Ibu Marsa dan Ibu Asmawet.
Di luarnya agak kasar, buka mata. Terus dalamnya halus. Sebagian sini agak tajam. Pinggir kertas. Terus kalau dalamnya sambil tutup mata agak rasa bergelombang. Ya.
Oke, kalau tutup mata tadi dari bagian dalamnya bergelombang, terus
halus tapi bergelombang. Bukannya kasar, tetap sama.
Ya.
Sama
tajam ya.
Ya.
Perfect. Does she also drew the analyzations she had?
Ini garis sama persegi.
Segi 4 ya itu ya.
Ini persegi 4 tapi jajar genjang atau garis. Itu yang bagian luar, dari luar ini. Kotak.
Kotak itu segi 4 ya, square.
Ya.
She analyzed the bigger elements that she found in structure and texture. And I would like to ask Gianni here to follow up on me, because maybe it's also interesting for her. She mentions the word sharp, for example. But how do you draw sharp? Gianni, you can maybe give an example. She mentions wavy, but how can she translate wavy into a pattern or into a drawing? So Gianni, if you have something to add on this.
Thank you, Nikki. I think maybe it's even a good idea to maybe take a minute and retry to illustrate these feelings into a kind of 2D aesthetics, so like line drawings. For example, like roughness, sharpness, and waviness are 3 very different textures, and it's very interesting how they can coexist in one element. So if you would say like to draw something that's sharp, you would think maybe of a knife or a pair of scissors. So you like very easily you'd think of like sharp elements. And when you think of something that's wavy, you would think of maybe the ocean or water, or and let's say when you think of something rough, perhaps the same as my teapot, you'd think of something that's strong and that's like hard to get through. So yeah, but that's just the very basic examples that could be very, very different in your experience.
Do we have time to take one more minute to do this exercise of translating feelings into lines and structures?
Enggak.
Ya.
Ada tajam, bergelombang, kasar, sama halus. Dibuat bulat.
Oke, Ibu Selvi.
Baik, Ibu.
Ya.
Ini yang bagian
Thank you, Masha.
atas apa Ibu Selvi?
Ini yang bagian lengkungnya itu halus, Bu. Jadi dia terang halus. Ini yang bagian tengah sisir dia bergelombang sedikit, Bu. Dia ada sedikit jeraba aja kayak. Yang ini bagian bulatnya logamnya tadi, Bu. Dia kasar pada pinggirnya kasar, Bu. Yang ini bagian garis-garis tajam.
Thank you, Ibu. Then the last element of this first exercise is we're going to analyze the patterns that you see on your object. So besides the structure you just analyzed and the color, you probably find some patterns. I've noticed, for example, the coins on the comb. Maybe they have the coins are round shaped. And as for the Bible, the fabric on the outside already has a pattern. So what I'm going to ask you is analyze your object on the patterns and draw these patterns. But then don't draw the object in total. So don't make a one-on-one copy of the object you see in front of you, but try to draw only the details. So if you find circles, draw only a circle. If you find a combination of small details, only draw the detail. And maybe a good idea here is to keep your object, turn your object around, because you may find a different pattern if you look at it from a side angle. Good luck.
Okay.
Salib di atas.
Diagonal. Mungkin sambil Marsa ceritakan saja salib apa. So, salib diagonal, terus ada titik-titik ya?
Kotak-kotak kecil.
Small
Kertas yang kurang rapi. Pinggir-pinggir itu. Ini garis-garis halus dari sisi ini.
Oke,
Terima kasih Ibu Marsa, Ibu Asmawet. The interesting thing is that the object that they brought is something that can move. It's not a solid object. Of course it's solid, but it's not a fixed object. So what you can do also is try to flip the book to the side and lay it open in certain angles, and then she also gets different patterns. That can be a follow-up analysis.
Ya, oke, Ibu Selviana.
Ya. Ada kotak, ada sebuah kotak kecil, Bu. Ada mahkotanya di atas kotak kecil tadi. Kemudian ada salib kecil lagi di atas lagi, Bu. Salib. Nah, yang logam berikut lagi ada gambar berupa manusia, Bu.
And a figure of a human face.
And if Ibu Selviana flips the comb to the side and takes a look at the teeth of the comb, are the teeth round-shaped or square-shaped or triangularly shaped? Maybe she can create a pattern out of the detail of the shape of the teeth.
Dia kayak setengah lingkaran begitu, Bu.
Half moon. She said half moon shape.
Yeah, that's the shape of the comb itself. But if she flips it to the side and takes a look at the underneath to the side of the teeth, and if she takes a close look at one tooth of the comb, what she
ini ditemukan motif ujung tombak, Ibu.
Yeah, I think you're doing a pretty good job. I think the only thing I could add is that sometimes you could zoom in just a little bit more. Let's say with Marsa, with the Bible. For instance, I'm a big fan of typography, and obviously in every Bible they use different typefaces, different, so every character looks different. So zooming in on those details could really help identify your object, or diversifying from others. Yeah, so that would be like to zoom in a bit more on the elements you've analyzed, and really ask yourself, how is this element different than a likewise element?
So instead of drawing a letter, literally use the detail of the letter. So even zoom in more than the letter. So you don't recognize the letter G, for example, but only focus on maybe the wave that the G makes in the bottom, for example. Okay, now we've done this first practice in analyzing the object that you brought. It's time to also take a step further, because I asked the participating artisans, I asked Ibu Selviana and Ibu Marsa and Asmawet and Ibu Syariat to bring a personal story, a story of their family, maybe that's told around the campfire, or maybe that's told to them by their grandparents or their parents. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask them to tell the story to you, because I think they are very interesting. And after that, we're going to do the same color pattern structure exercise based on the story. Only this time it will be abstract. So the artisans need to extract certain colors they associate with the story they just told. Maybe the story is about a black bird, then of course black will play a role, but the story can also be a love story, which makes the color red or pink maybe important into the design. So you have various levels of putting color to this story. Same goes for pattern. Maybe you associate, we just did the exercise of translating a certain pattern or certain feeling into a design. And maybe in the story there's talked about the sea. So you can try to make a pattern that represents the sea. And the last one, structure. Maybe the story is about something a war or something. Can you translate this feeling into a line or into a structure, a visual 2D structure? So that's part of the storytelling and making it visual.
Kisah saya tahu menenun bermula ketika saya putus sekolah. Dulu keluarga kami cukup tergolong keluarga yang tidak mampu. Ayah dan ibu saya semua sudah almarhum. Kami ada 6 bersaudara, 1 laki-laki, 5 perempuan. Pada waktu itu, saya tamat SD kelas 6. Saya sangat berharap bahwa saya bisa melanjutkan sekolah lagi ke SMP, sama seperti teman-teman saya yang lainnya. Namun, salah daya, semua hanyalah berubah menjadi satu impian yang tidak bisa saya gapai. Karena kedua orang tua saya tidak sanggup menyekolahkan saya di SMP, saya putus asa. Setiap kali saya melihat teman-teman saya pergi ke sekolah, selalu menetes air mata. Dan selalu berdoa kepada Tuhan, ya Bapak, kenapa saya tidak sampai pada titik yang saya gapai. Tapi terima kasih pada Tuhan, masih memberikan saya sangat luar biasa, kesehatan jasmani maupun rohani. Dan saya diajak oleh ibu almarhum saya untuk belajar menenun, mewarnai, bahkan sampai mendesain futus atau motif. Dan saya terus mempertahankan, terus menenun hingga saya berkeluarga, dan terus lagi giat bekerja keras untuk menyekolahkan anak-anak saya sampai pada hari ini.
saya menceritakan awal terjadinya motif Rajan Dao. Dan sebelum saya menceritakan, saya perlihatkan dulu ini yang motif Rajan Dao asli. Dari awal sampai akhir. Baik. Pada zaman kerajaan seorang Raja Polandau, dia memerintahkan seorang penenun untuk membuat satu lembar kain untuk raja pakai. Si penenun mulai mengerjakan tugasnya setelah benang sudah disiap diikat. Si pengrajin ini bingung. Dia tidak tahu dia mau ikat motif yang mana. Karena bingung dan belum menemukan motif yang pas untuk sang raja pakai, si pengrajin menyimpan benang yang siap diikat itu di teras rumahnya. Dan dia pun masuk untuk beristirahat dan tidur. Malam itu datanglah seekor ikan gergahing mematuk benang itu. Meninggalkan noda membentuk sebuah motif. Besok paginya si pengrajin bangun dan melihat benang. Dan dia heran. Dia melihat noda-noda itu membentuk sebuah motif yang indah sekali. Dia pun langsung mengikatnya sesuai dengan noda yang ditinggalkan si ikan ini. Dan terciptalah sebuah motif yang indah. Sejak saat itu motif tersebut hanya boleh dipakai oleh para raja di Pulau Dao. Tidak sembarang orang pakai. Sekarang memang sudah dijual bebas kemana-mana, tapi harganya cukup mahal. Dan hanya orang mampu yang bisa membelinya, dan tidak semua pengrajin bisa membuat motif tersebut, karena motifnya susah diikat atau susah ditiru. Sekian cerita saya.
Saya ikut pulang. Di situ Pinapi 6 tahun 2 bulan itu saya dengan Bapak di 2006 dengan ini Raffi Nazar. Nanti kami ini membuat pilihan ketika di Jalan jadi pulang itu bawa Bapak dengan ini Pinapi. Tinggal 2 bulan.
We just rounded off the first part of this workshop where we analyzed the object that you brought, and we analyzed the color, the pattern, and the texture and structure. Now, in the second part, we're going to cook for the future. That's what I called it. So, the elements from the previous exercise, in my opinion, you can see as a set of ingredients that allow you to cook this delicious meal. So, what we're going to do in the second part is we're going to play around with the ingredients you just found. So the ingredients of color, the ingredients of pattern, and the ingredients of structure. And we're going to mix them around and making various combinations of these elements and of these ingredients. And to help you, you can keep the following story in mind. Assume that your ikats will last several generations. So we all passed already to another world after our lives. And then in 200 years, maybe somebody finds one of your ikats. And this person in 2100 or 2200 stumbles upon your design in an inventory. And this person grabs this piece of ikat cloth that you created. And this person immediately feels that it's something of value with many hours of manual labor into it. And it's the colors and the patterns on this ikat that strikes this person. He feels the design and he tells a story, and the design tells a story about the maker. So with this paradigm, we're going to make a design using the elements that you found in part 1. You're going to create a design that tells a story about you, about your personal heritage. So the end goal of this exercise is to create a design that communicates, of course, your personal heritage and you as a designer into a design using the elements from the first part. But to give, maybe take the step down, I just told you about the ingredients, and that the ingredients you just found, so the colors, the patterns, the structures, is something you can cook with. And you can compare it with maybe using onions, using salt, pepper, and one other vegetable. And by mixing these ingredients in various ways, you can create various kind of meals. Onions are almost used in every meal, in the Netherlands at least. I don't know how it is in Indonesia. But onions are a very various element to cook with. And the same goes for stripes. If you use the element of stripes in a design, there are many different ways to use stripes into various different designs. Then I'd like to invite you now to take all the pieces of paper you used in the first part, with the colors on it, with the patterns on it, and with the structure designs on it. And on the next piece of paper, you're going to draw a rectangular shape that represents your ikat design. So the working space of your ikat. And on this shape, you're going to play around with the various elements you have. If you've done that, you skip this paper to the side, draw a next square for your next ikat design, and use the same elements, but in a different combination. So really try to play around. Gianni made an example of how to draw a square that represents the ikat, and into this rectangle, you're going to place the patterns and the colors that you chose in the first part of this workshop. Of course, in this, they're doing the exercise now. Of course, this will be a sketch. If they're going to really make it into a workable design, then of course the translation needs to be made into making a weaving pattern out of it, or workable weaving pattern. So this is just going to be a sketch for an actual weave.
Saya sudah, Ibu.
Oh ya, Ibu Selvi, bisa menunjukkan Bu gambarnya?
Ini dalam satu bentuk kotak panjang. Saya letakkan tadi yang garis-garis yang kayak tadi ini, ujung tombak. Lalu dia berjalan, dia bergelombang-gelombang. Lalu kemudian ada garis-garis kecilnya lagi menempuh. Mengisi yang.
Oke.
Please continue. It looks gorgeous.
Dari apa? Garis.
Mungkin Ibu Selvi lebih dekat lagi, Bu, ya.
Ini yang dari tadi ujung, berupa ujung tombak tadi, bisa saya letakkan ininya. Dia punya kayak garis ini. Ini yang sementara dia berada di posisi ini, Bu.
Sini dikit.
Ujung tombak ya, Bu, itu?
Iya,
dari
ujung yang ini Bu. Nah, yang ini. Kemudian ini yang menandakan tadi yang ujung tombak yang berupa lingkaran kayak itu bulat ini, dia agak melengkung sedikit, lalu kemudian dia agak ke dalam masuk lingkaran, tapi dia kayak bunga Bu. Yang di tengah tadi yang logam bulat-bulat, boleh saya letakkan tambah di yang tadi ujung tombak yang dari tengahnya ini.
Oh, oke. Itu yang garis-garis itu apa, Bu? Yang garis lurus itu?
Yang ini sebuah kotak, Bu. Ini kotak. Kemudian ini...
Yang garis ini, Bu. Garis kan ada garis-garis seperti ini kan, Bu? Garis miring.
Ini garis tajam, Bu. Garis tajam. Dia kayak menunjukkan kayak ujung tombak juga, Bu. Ini. Lalu dia agak menyiku sedikit.
It is really nice. You can see various ways of designing. Of course, there is placing various elements together to create a new shape. That's what Ibu Selviana is currently showing us. In the previous one, she automatically repeated a certain pattern to create a new pattern, and she can continue doing that also to the bottom of the design.
Yeah.
And a third possibility is that she tells a chronological story, by placing elements after each other. In her case, in Selviana's case, she brought the comb, that is a marital element, a marital object, and she discussed with us that it's about cleanliness, faithfulness, and being obedient. She can use these three elements to build a new design around marital, make a marital ikat, for example.
Yes, I've got something to add still. It's very interesting that you started with designing a symbol, Ibu Selviana, and what Nikki said, that it's now if it gets time to start looking at context. So how could you make your symbol work to tell a kind of narrative, a story that does right to the object that you got with you. So you could either think of using this symbol smaller and in a repetitive way in your ikat. So what happens when you change the placement of the symbol? What happens when you add certain colors to it? Does it start telling a different story? And yeah, so wonderful start. And I think I just wanted to add this to perhaps the next task.
Bisa ke depan lagi, Bu, biar jelas.
Lebih maju sedikit, Bu Marsa, ya.
Bisa dijelaskan, Bu, mungkin nyalain mikrofonnya?
Ya, masih mute.
Mikrofonnya masih mati, Bu. Ya, mungkin bisa dijelaskan, Bu, gambarnya?
Ini yang tajam tadi ya. Terus ini persegi tadi kotak kecil-kecil.
Oke,
sama yang bulat-bulat. Terus gelombang tadi disambung jadi bunga, dibuat bentuk bunga bergelombang.
Ada lagi, Bu, itu warnanya apa ya, Bu? Di sini kurang kelihatan jelas. Ibu bisa jelaskan warna-warnanya apa saja?
Merah, hitam, biru, sama orange.
Black. Ibu bisa jelaskan, Bu, misalnya kenapa yang bagian segitiga itu Ibu pakai warna merah?
Suka saja sih.
Bisa dijelaskan lagi, Bu, itu ada warna apa, Bu, yang di bagian atas? Agak gelap soalnya.
Ini salibnya hitam. Ini karena kayunya hitam. Salib biasa kan terus dari kayu yang agak hitam. Terus yang gelombang-gelombang biru, kayak gelombang laut biru.
Terima kasih, Ibu Marsa and Ibu Asmawet. Gianni, do you have something to add on to this design that they showed?
Yeah, I actually do. Thank you, Ibu Marsa, for showing that. I had the same question initially, like the red triangles, because they jump out of your design pretty good. It's also very interesting how you use the different textures, like softness and roughness and sharpness into your design. It also looks like a pretty structured ikat. Next, I'll perhaps say that it would be good for you to think about scaling and giving emphasis to certain elements. So for instance, if this would be, well, let's see how I can do this. This would be your ikat, and you would have the red triangles. You could maybe like have them bigger, or have them a few like smaller and bigger again and smaller, and perhaps think about the waviness, how they could overlap instead of having it nicely structured. And the circles of like softness, how could they play a more dynamic role in your ikat? And yeah, and perhaps the crosses could be used in a different way as well. And then you could perhaps give some meaning to the red triangles. What do they make you think of? Perhaps now it maybe looks like as if the crosses are placed on kind of red mountains. So I think it's good to now play around with structure and meaning, and how your different structures and scaling could add a kind of different layer to the context of your ikat.
Thank you so much, Gianni. I think it's really good idea.
Terima kasih.
Also keep in mind that if, let's say we need to make a nasi goreng, if I'm going to make the nasi goreng with the ingredients and Gianni makes a nasi goreng with the same ingredients, probably it will taste totally different. So yeah, embrace your personality in your design. That's the message.
Ya, Ibu Marsa, kameranya mati ya, Ibu Marsa? Halo, Bu Marsa.
Padam.
Kameranya mati, Bu.
Listrik padam.
Okay, so now it's time to go to the next part. So first, we've looked at different like objects and how we could deconstruct them in terms of visual aspects, in terms of texture. Now I want to go on to the things that are very personal. So things that everyone sees different, is that something like emotion. So when you communicate a kind of story or narrative through your work, emotion is a big part of that. For instance, you could draw something, you could, like when you look at, for instance, movies, like every scene has a kind of new vibe to it. So someone could be happy, or someone could be sad, or someone could go to a party and be very exciting. So there's different emotions you could use in your work, in your ikats, to convey a different message. And so the next part would be about this. So I would like you to get a piece of paper. And I know last time we did the exercise with the dots. And so we're going to do the same thing, but now a bit bigger. So this time we will draw the first dot in the left top corner and the second dot here in the right bottom corner. So if everyone has a piece of paper and has drawn the dots, then I'm going to ask you to draw a happy line, but now use the whole page. So let's say I want to draw something that's happy. I'll be like, hey, this is how, and try to like draw your feeling without getting your pen off the paper. So you don't have to go straight to the dot. You can use the whole page, and then when you feel like the feeling is over, then you connect the dot. Yeah, maybe you could comment on that is try to feel like you are the line. So if you are happy, how do you feel? And try to convey that same meaning through drawing the line.
Itu titiknya. Jadi itu gambar garis yang Ibu mau ketika perasaannya bahagia ya, Bu?
Iya, Ibu.
Bagus, Bu, ya. Ibu Marsa dan Asmawet bagaimana?
Seperti pesan.
Oh.
Yes, very, very good. Very good.
Bagus, Bu. Yeah.
So you'll see that there's very different ways to do the same exercise. So as there's so many ways to be happy, there's a lot of ways to express happiness through drawing. Now, I would like you to get another piece of paper, but this time we're gonna, again, draw the dots. But this time, the line is set. And I'm not going to show you how to draw it. I would like you to try it yourself. And again, try to use the whole page.
Ada yang sudah selesai, Bu, mungkin? Ya, oh, oke. So, Ibu Marsa dan Asmawet sudah menggambar garis kalau sedih.
Awesome. Very nice, Marsa. Can I ask Marsa, what did you feel when you were drawing the line?
Kacau.
Kacau.
Yeah.
Chaotic. She said chaotic. She felt chaotic when she drew the line.
Very well, very well. Thank you. And Ibu Selviana?
Ibu Selvi, Bu.
Explain what you felt when you were drawing.
Ini ketika merasa sedih, lagi emosi.
Good. I think, yeah, this is a very good starting point for using lines with different emotions. Now, I would like you to draw. We're going to do the same exercise, but now perhaps a little bit more difficult. Let's say we'll have the same exercise with the dots, but this time draw a line that's afraid. You could perhaps wonder why the line is afraid.
Ibu Selvi sudah, Bu? Sudah
Oh, very fast, very good.
Oke. Bisa jelaskan, Bu?
Ya, lebih dekat Bu Selvi.
Could you explain, Ibu Selviana, why the line is afraid?
Ketakut. Perasaan saya seperti garis ini, Bu. Dia terombang-ambing, kemudian mau terjun ke bawah, kemudian dia harus kembali, kemudian dia bergelombang, merasa perasaan tidak nyaman begitu, rasanya takut sekali.
Oh.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Selviana.
Ibu Marsa dan
Marsa?
Tajam-tajam. Karena saya takut benda tajam.
So,
sesuatu yang tajam, menakutkan.
Okay.
Good, very good. Well, that's a good bridge towards the next exercise, because now we've talked about emotion, which could be a lot of different ones. We did this one, but then there's something like context. As you've explained, about like uneven ground. So that was a kind of context, like personal story attached to the emotion, which then gives output to the design. So what we're going to do now is going to switch these two up. So now first we're going to decide the context, and then we're going to attach the emotion to it, and then we're going to design. This time is ask ourselves, why is the line happy? I'll give an example. Let's say the line is happy today because there's nice weather. And so then I'm going to draw the line. So, okay, so it's nice weather. Let's say I'll draw shapes that make me think of a sun. And then perhaps it makes me think of having ice cream. And perhaps to flowers, it's nice weather. What do we do when it's nice weather? Maybe we go for a swim. And then at the end of the day, when the weather is gone, we go to our final destination, which is the dot. we could just start with the same emotions, so happiness, and with the reason that it's nice weather.
Ini saya merasa senang karena kami di sini kan kekeringan, Bu. Jadi sekarang saat musim hujan, merasa senang karena tanaman padi juga bisa tumbuh dengan segar. Kemudian daun-daun tarum untuk pewarna alam semua pada ada. Jadi merasa senang sekali Ibu kalau ketika mendapat curah hujan yang sangat luar biasa dalam tahun ini, Bu.
So that's
Oh, that's a very good story.
Apa itu, Bu? Bisa dijelaskan?
Ini mau bikin nekat tapi gagal.
Boneka apa, Bu? Boneka apa?
Anda.
Boneka apa, panda?
Ya.
Kenapa Ibu mau bikin boneka panda, Bu? Ceritakan kenapa itu membuat Ibu senang. Halo?
Ya kayak imut.
Okay. So,
Cuteness.
Ah.
Panda.
That's also a very interesting starting point. Okay, so moving on, we could go back to fair. But this time, I'm going to ask you, well, perhaps let's start with Ibu Selviana. Is there something you're afraid of?
Ketika dikejar oleh anjing, Ibu.
She's afraid of dogs. So
Dogs.
she's afraid of being chased by dogs.
Okay, well, that's an interesting one. And Ibu Marsa?
Bu Marsa gimana, Bu? Apa ada sesuatu yang Ibu takuti gitu?
Kalau saya takut menyeberang.
Oh, she's afraid of crossing the roads.
Crossing the road.
Karena ketabrak motor jadi trauma.
Oh, because she had an accident before, so she was afraid of crossing the road.
So okay, very very creative too. Let's try now to.
Maybe I just ask a bit, Diani, why people afraid of dogs, because in NTT dogs are very wild. Most of the dogs are not trained like in Holland where is pet part in the house, but the dogs are live outside and they're wild. So if you go to that region, the first thing you were afraid is that the dogs are running after you. And about the other one is that Marsa makes her, crossing the road, you know, that the transportation or traffic lights or traffics are not so really organized like here. So that is also fear, when people fear when they are on the road, afraid of the cars and afraid of the wild animals. Is dog meaning? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Yeti, for your explanations. I would like everyone to connect the dots, but this time use the thing you're afraid of. So for Selviana, it would be draw a line that's afraid of dogs. And for Ibu Marsa, drawing a line that's afraid of crossing the road. Yeah. Also try to not lift your pen from the paper. So it has to be one straight line. Or one line, I mean.
Oke, Ibu Marsa mungkin bisa jelaskan? Itu perasaan
kalau lebih dekat gambarnya Ibu Marsa. Ya, tolong lebih dekat.
Ya, saya ngeri kalau pas mau menyeberang tuh ngeri, perasaannya kacau, takut, gemetar.
Good, thank you.
Ya, Ibu Selvi sudah.
Ini ketika takut dikejar anjing, Ibu.
Wow.
Majuan dikit Ibu gambarnya. Ya.
Ya. Bisa dijelaskan Bu, garisnya itu ketakutan dikejar anjing?
Ini ketika dikejar anjing lari, ketakutan lari.
Oh.
Tidak tahu jalannya kemana lagi, Ibu.
Awesome. Thank you both of you for showing. I think these two are very good explanations of how to use emotion in the drawing of lines. Perhaps something to think about is to try to convey a story through the curve of the line, so that something when drawing midway happens before you end before you reach to the end point. But I guess that's something to think about, and perhaps for another time. I do have one more exercise, if there's enough time. I'm looking at Yeti and Yulita. Yeah?
We have approximately like 15 minutes time for that.
Okay. Last time we talked about elements from your IKATs. I think everyone chose one at a time. And I'll get my element here as well. So I would like you to start experimenting with using the element that you chose from your IKAT, turning into emotions. So I chose sunflowers, and I'm not the best drawer, but it's still, even if you're not the best drawer, it's very easy to convey emotion through certain symbols. So let's say here on the left, you can see that this sunflower is way more happy than this sunflower. And looking more in depth towards that, you could analyze why that is. So analyzing these two elements, you could ask why this one is happy. You could say perhaps it's this curve here, which is very different than the curve on this one. Because this one goes up, and this one is nearly ready to fall down. And you could also say it's the leaving leaves from the sunflower, or perhaps because they are hanging down. And here you can see them going up. So now I'd like to ask Ibu Selviana, what was the element from your ikat that we chose last time?
Ujung tombak dengan nugun.
Dengan apa?
Ujung tombak dan
nugun.
Nugun tuh apa, Bu?
Nugun. Bebaktaran.
Bebaktaran. Bebaktaran tuh apa ya, Bu?
Ya seperti ini, Bu.
So
I think it's good to start with the arrow.
Okay.
And I think for Ibu Marsa, was it water?
Kupu-kupu. Sama
Oh,
ikan.
butterfly. Okay, so what we'll try, leave this on. We'll try to draw this element, but now in a happy way. So draw an arrow that's happy for Ibu Selviana, and draw a butterfly that's happy for Ibu Marsa.
Suruh bahagia enak. Ya. Nah, anak wae madri.
Ini kalau yang di atas ketika perasaan senang, Gambarnya seperti ini, Ibu. Kalau ketika perasaan lagi benci marah, dia seperti ini.
Oh, itu ujung tombak ya, Bu ya? Itu apa ujung?
Ya, ujung tombak, Ibu.
Oh.
Okay, perhaps as a kind of feedback, try to exaggerate. Maybe think of movies when you see someone who's really happy in the movie. They're like jumping around and smelling flowers and greeting other people in a very happy way. Try to use that in your drawing as well to make it very, very clear that the arrow is happy.
Yeah, I want to add to that something to that. Currently, she's using the arrow in the traditional way. And I know there are certain rules to keeping the shape of the arrow. But in this exercise, she's completely free to draw the arrow in her way. So try to make the arrow happy, use the emotion of happy, but do it, try to, at the same time, lose the traditional shape of the arrow.
Thank you, Nikki. That's a very good point.
Yeah. Oh.
Ini kalau lagi senang berwarna, kalau lagi sedih hitam.
Okay.
Gelap.
Oh, that's very good. Very interesting. Also that you already drew the sad one as well. So you could compare those two next to each other. Yeah, to make it even harder, I would say try to not use color and try to just use the shapes. And then you'll see a difference. And then when you do use color, then the expression will be even more emphasized in your work.
Ya, sudah Bu, Ibu Selvi?
Ya, sudah Ibu.
Itu yang mana yang senang, yang mana yang sedih Bu? Bisa dijelaskan?
Kalau yang senang, dia panahnya lurus, kemudian ada sedikit garis kecil, dia kayak menuju ke atas, ini. Kalau yang panah yang sebelah ini menunjukkan sementara marah, garisnya ini dia menunjukkan ke arah bawah, Ibu. Ini ke arah atas, ini ke arah bawah, ini menandakan marah, ini senang.
Okay, that's a good starting point. I'm happy that you draw a very different arrow this time. Following Nikki's feedback, I would say maybe to go even more in the expression, look at the line drawings that we just did about happiness. When you look at the lines that we drew, for instance, this one, and when you drew that one, it was about happiness and the flow of the lines. How could you implement that in your arrow to make it even convey the meaning of happiness a bit more?
Okay. Kalau lagi senang, kupu-kupunya sayapnya terbuka lebar. Kalau lagi sedih kayak malas terbang gitu.
Yes, very good, Ibu Marsa. Yeah, I think that's a kind of way to finish the workshop. I think perhaps after this you could think about ways how you could implement these drawings. So let's say you would like to make an ikat with sad butterflies. How would you use your techniques that you know way more about than I do? How to use that and implement these techniques about sadness and the happy lines and etc. in your weaving structures to convey meaning and emotion through it.
I like to combine the things we learned today, but only if there's time, Julita.
Yeah, I think now Nikki and Gianni can give like a conclusion of today's workshop, and then after that we'll follow by Yeti to close the workshop. Mm-hmm. Yes, Nikki, please.
Gianni, can you start maybe?
Yeah, I think today was a really good process of using elements, starting from the objects that everyone brought with them, to deconstructing them into shapes and textures and colors, through looking at things that you normally don't see. So using your blindness to guide you through deconstructing elements, and now using emotion. And I think we're coming pretty close to using context and meaning to designing new ikats. And perhaps I would say that maybe even to like explore more in your own time try to look around you and look for elements that you can use to convey a story or a meaning. Let's say you walked outside and you see flowers and be like, how could I tell a story about these flowers through my ikats? So you could get more ownership about the stories that you tell through your work, and perhaps that way explore a different way of designing and shaping your own style, perhaps, or your own meaning or reason to be an artist.
Well, the goal of today was to teach you how to explain your personal stories into ikat. And we've shown you various ways to do this. And as I explained before, the cooking, you've learned today to analyze your object, to use color, to use patterns, to use texture. And then with a wonderful workshop of Gianni, you also learned how to put expression and motion into these shapes that you discovered. So I really hope that you take a good look at all the elements that you learned today, because these techniques combined provide you the ownership and various tools to really grasp your personal heritage and translate it into a story. So I invite you all to go on with this with these exercises the coming days and the coming weeks, so you feel empowered to create your personal heritage and to tell your personal stories into ikat. And I'm very much looking forward to those results. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you so much. So before we come to the end of our meeting today, we would also like to hear from our artisans how they feel about this exercise. We always put them also as subject of the project, not the object of the project. We in CCD-NL trying to have everyone equal. They also therefore to hear about their voice.
Baik, terima kasih Ibu. Terima kasih banyak pada Ibu Niki, Pak Jene. Kali ini saya merasa sangat senang Ibu ketika mengikuti workshop kali ini, sangat luar biasa. Karena dari saya, di dalam workshop tadi banyak temukan ide-ide baru yang dipelajari saat ini Ibu. Ini sangat luar biasa Ibu. Dan saya mau supaya ke depannya lebih lagi giat untuk terus mau belajar dan belajar Ibu. Terima kasih Ibu.
Saya senang sekali karena sudah ikut workshop dengan Ibu Niki, dengan Pak Gianni. Ini hari betul-betul saya mendapat pengalaman dan saya berharap ke depannya dengan pemerintah di Belanda bisa terus perhatikan kami di sini. Terima kasih.
Ya, Ibu Marsa.
Ya, perasaan saya merasa senang, bahagia karena dapat ilmu baru, ide-ide yang baru. Ya, mungkin bisa dipakai untuk desain ke depan. Terus harapan saya kalau bisa kami tetap dihubungkan dengan Ibu Niki dan Pak Gianni supaya lebih memperluas ilmu kami gitu.
Ya, terima kasih. Masih
Terima
tambah?
kasih untuk Ibu Niki dan Pak Gianni. Terima kasih banyak.
On behalf of CCD-NL, I would like to thank all the people that had participated in this workshop collaboration between Dutch designers and Indonesian Ikat Tenun artisans, shaping your heritage, a workshop in constructing your design practice. First of all, thank you to Nikki Wester, who had worked hard to come up with this interactive workshop as the last part of her lecture series on design and culture heritage. Thank you for guiding the Ikat Tenun artisans to explore new creative ways to engage with their heritage and incorporate them into their ikat design. Thank you also to Gianni Antonia and the Wasserij for their support in this workshop, especially in encouraging the artisans to try various approaches to express themselves in their design. We hope to continue working with both Nikki Wester and Gianni Antonia for our upcoming projects, and also to strengthen our collaboration with the Wasserij in the future. Thank you also to the Indonesian Ikat Tenun artisans, Selviana, Marsa, Asmawet, and Syariat, who eagerly participated in this workshop to learn new ways to create new ikat motif. We hope that they can put the knowledge from this workshop to practice and create new, unique ikat motif. Thank you also to all CCD-NL staff who have worked hard to prepare and to promote this event. Last but not least, we would like to express our gratitude to the municipality of Rotterdam for their generous support in making this workshop possible. Thank you for your continuous support in connecting artisans in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and artisans in East Nusa Tenggara, Indonesia. Thank you so much to all the audience for watching this workshop and for supporting CCD-NL. See you soon in our next event. Terima kasih, dank u wel. Thank you.